I once believed in destiny, in purpose, in the radiant glory of mankind's ascension among the stars. How naive we were, those of us who marched beneath golden Aquilas, ceramite gleaming with righteous conviction, hearts burning for an imperium that promised perfection. None are more deeply damned than those who once believed themselves holy. The mutation began in my left hand. A subtle change at first, barely noticeable amid the ceaseless rigors of war. Finger joints stiffened, skin hardened like bark on an ancient tree. I concealed it for 17 campaigns across 3 star systems. My battle brothers would have executed me without hesitation had they known. Genetic deviation is unforgivable among the Emperor's finest. Even now I remember the weight of my chainsword, its teeth vibrating with murderous intent as I severed the heads of brothers who showed the slightest sign of corruption. How viciously I hunted those whose genetic purity faltered. How eagerly I delivered the Emperor's mercy with bolt and blade. And now I stare at hands that are no longer hands, talons that shift and reform with each passing day, flesh rippling beneath my gaze, responding to thoughts I never consciously form. The Iron Lord's chapter exists now only in my memory. I abandoned their insignia the day I fled into the screaming void that claimed my soul. 5 centuries have passed since I pledged myself to powers that promised salvation from mutation, from weakness, from decay. 5 centuries of blood and betrayal, of screaming revelation and silent horror. They call us Chaos Space Marines, as if 2 words could encompass the truth of our existence, as if a simple label could capture the totality of our damnation. We who were once the Imperium's sword, now turned against the hand that forged us. We who bartered immortality for something far worse than death. I am Brother Rylan no longer. That name belongs to a dead man, a fool who believed genetic corruption could be bargained away through devotion to darker gods. The Black Legion welcomed me with open arms, their armor already twisted into nightmarish configurations, their flesh already surrendered to change. They spoke promises of glory, of ascension, of freedom from the hypocritical tyranny of the false emperor. What they never mentioned was the price, the true, unending cost of chaos worship. Let me tell you of the long war, mortal listener. Let me speak of the cursed eternity that awaits those who surrender their humanity to the ruinous powers. Let me chronicle the slow dissolution of mind and body that no power armor can protect against. Let me speak of the hollow glory earned in service to gods who view their most devoted servants as nothing but playthings. This is my confession, my warning, my epitaph. Though death will never claim me, I am already a corpse, a walking remnant of a being who once knew purpose. Now I know only hunger, rage, and the mocking laughter of thirsting gods. This is the story of my damnation. The void welcomes you to witness it. I will begin with the day I died. My squad deployed to the mining world of Karadesh IV, an unremarkable planet of modest industrial output and undistinguished faithful, the kind of world the Imperium values only for its tithes, forgotten the moment those tithes are delivered. Reports of worker unrest had reached the nearby Iron Lord's garrison. Whispers of strange symbols carved into rockcrete walls. Rumors of miners chanting forbidden verses in the deepest shafts. Standard heretical uprising. Standard compliance restoration mission. We made planetfall at dawn. 4 tactical squads led by Chaplain Dorvis. The mining administrators greeted us with nervous reverence, guiding our Thunderhawks to the central processing facility. Their fear was palpable, not just fear of the heresy they had reported, but fear of us, of the retribution that follows when an Astartes chapter judges mortal stewardship lacking. The disturbances began 3 months ago, my lords, the chief administrator explained, voice quavering. Production quotas fell by 7%. Workers reported nightmares. Machinery malfunctions increased threefold. Dorvis towered over the man, skull helm betraying no emotion. Show us where the symbols appeared. They led us through corridors never designed for power-armored giants. My pauldron scraped walls, leaving gouges in the metal. The administrators winced at every screech of ceramite on infrastructure. Such is the burden of Imperial worlds, to be broken by the very forces sent to protect them. The first symbol appeared on a blast door leading to shaft 17, an 8-arrowed star radiating from a central eye, crude yet unmistakable. The mark of chaos undivided, Dorvis intoned, augmented voice echoing like a death knell. Who discovered this blasphemy? Shift Supervisor Kale, the administrator replied. He reported it immediately. We sealed the shaft. And where is this supervisor now? I asked. The man glanced at his data slate. According to logs, he descended into shaft 17 2 days ago with a security team. They never returned. Dorvis turned to us. Brother Rian, secure the upper levels. Brother Terrace, establish perimeter. Brother Averick, interrogate personnel. Brother Carden, with me to the comms array. We update chapter command. I nodded, cycling my bolter. As you command, Chaplain. 4 battle brothers followed me toward the sealed blast door. Multispectrum auspex showed movement beyond. Nothing conclusive. Deep mining facilities always register anomalies. Prepare for breach, I ordered, placing melta charges at the door's weak points. Full auto-sense protocols. Expect warp contamination. The door disintegrated in a flash of superheated air. We advanced through the glowing aperture, bolters raised, helmet sensors piercing the darkness. The shaft plunged downward, a vast vertical tunnel of metal, struts, and elevator mechanisms. The platform before us was empty save for abandoned equipment and half-eaten rations, lumens flickering weakly. Brother Raylan, Vox reported over squad channel. Auspex detecting multiple life signs 300 meters below. Numbers? Indeterminate. Readings keep shifting. That should have been our first warning. We descended the maintenance ladders, power armor servos whining. The air thickened, metallic dust laced with something coppery and sweet that even our filters couldn't remove. Blood, vast quantities of it. 200 meters down, we found the first bodies, security personnel splayed across a platform, flesh twisted into impossible geometries, bones protruding at mathematically perfect angles, eyes replaced with crystalline structures that still tracked our movement. Throne, preserve us, Brother Micros whispered. I let the breach of discipline pass. They still live, Brother Karras observed, bolter trained. Permission to grant the Emperor's mercy? I hesitated. The mutations showed pattern, purpose, design. Negative, secure 1 for interrogation. That was my first error. As Karras approached, every crystalline eye pulsed. A voice spoke, not from throats, but from the air itself. Reality splitting to birth the words. The sons of iron come to witness the change. How appropriate. How symmetrical. I raised my bolter. Identify yourself, warp entity. We are the revelation, the gateway, the mathematicians of flesh, your brothers in transformation. Heretics, I spat. You have strayed from the Emperor's light. Laughter echoed from everywhere and nowhere. The Emperor, the great deceiver who hides the truth of your existence. Look upon our metamorphosis and see your future, Iron Lord. See the glory that awaits when you surrender to change. I fired. Explosive rounds reduced the nearest body to vapor. Purge them all, I ordered. No interrogations. Bolters barked in disciplined fury. Fluids slicked the platform, yet the crystalline eyes remained intact, tinkling gently as they fell. Brother Karras bent to examine one. That was our second error. Fascinating structure, he said, holding the crystal between armored fingers. The facets shift when not directly observed. Dispose of it, I commanded. All warp artifacts must be purged. But as he raised his fist, the crystal flared. A lance of cold light pierced ceramite, flesh, bone, straight into his primary heart. Karras collapsed. No blood. Only light. Brother Karras is compromised, I voxed. Contain him. He rose jerkily, puppet-like. His helm turned toward me. Raylan, he said, voice layered with impossible harmonics that made my auto-senses scream. The change comes for all of us, even you, especially you. I did what any loyal space marine would do. I executed him where he stood. A burst of bolter fire severed head from shoulders. His body fell, yet no blood flowed. Only light coalescing into crystalline growths. Fall back, I ordered. Full quarantine. Shaft 17 requires exterminatus-level purging. We retreated up the ladders, firing at writhing masses that pursued. Former miners climbing with inhuman speed. Crystal limbs finding purchase on sheer metal. Brother Vox fell next, dragged down by arms that should never have reached him. His scream ended in the sound of shattering glass. I did not look back. 3 of us reached the upper platform. I triggered the demolition charges. The facility shuddered as the shaft collapsed in an avalanche of rock and steel. Seal the blast door, I commanded. Nothing emerges from shaft 17. But as technicians repaired the melted door, I noticed something on my gauntlet. A crystal fragment no larger than a grain of sand, embedded in the ceramite. It pulsed once with cold light. I said nothing. Reported nothing. That was my third and final error as a loyal son of the Emperor. By the time we returned to our battle barge, the crystal had vanished, absorbed into my armor. I convinced myself it was destroyed. A comforting lie. That night, removing my armor in the privacy of my Spartan quarters, I found a small, hard growth on my left palm, a perfect geometric shape pressing outward against the skin. Not painful, insistent, present. I should have reported to the apothecary immediately. Instead, I covered it with a combat dressing and continued my duties. Thus began my 17 campaign deception, the slow spread of change through flesh and gene seed, hidden beneath armor, duty, and devotion. The truth remains. Corruption began long before I ever pledged myself to chaos. It began with a single moment of weakness, a single choice to hide what I had become, out of fear, out of pride. The Imperium would call this heresy. The dark gods would call it destiny. I call it what it truly was, cowardice. For nearly 2 decades I fought as a loyal Iron Lord while the change worked through me like slow poison. The crystalline growth spread through my left arm, then across my chest, restructuring muscle and bone into more efficient configurations. I learned to control it somewhat, to force it to recede temporarily through sheer willpower before battle or inspections. Each regression became harder. Each advance of the corruption spread faster. I turned to forbidden texts, studying in secret the very heresies I was sworn to destroy, seeking not to worship chaos, but to understand my enemy enough to defeat it within my own flesh. Such arrogance, as if chaos could be understood without being transformed by the knowledge. In the battle for Hive Tarsus, my left arm finally betrayed me. In the midst of close combat with a heretic officer, my power fist malfunctioned, or so my battle brothers assumed. In truth, my arm had suddenly extended to twice its normal length, ceramite cracking as the limb reformed into a crystalline scythe that bisected my opponent, along with 2 of his bodyguards. Brother Auric witnessed the transformation. Our eyes met through our visors, no words necessary. He knew. I knew. He knew what must follow. That night, as the Iron Lords celebrated victory in the Hive's reconsecrated cathedral, I made my choice. Not out of devotion to chaos, but out of desperation, out of self-preservation. I killed Brother Auric in his sleep, crushing his windpipe with my mutated hand. I took his backup oxygen supply, a plasma pistol, and 3 melta charges. Then I sabotaged the cathedral's ancient support columns and fled into the underhive as the entire structure collapsed upon my chapter brothers. 73 loyal Space Marines died that night, buried beneath thousands of tons of consecrated stone. I watched from a distance as rescue teams pulled broken ceramite from the rubble, listened on stolen Vox channels as Chapter Command declared me missing, presumed fallen. If only I had fallen. True death would have been a kinder fate than what awaited me. For 3 months I hid in the underhive, moving only at night, subsisting on vermin and recycled water. My armor's power supply failed within weeks. The weight of dead ceramite made movement nearly impossible, but I dared not abandon it. A Space Marine's armor is his identity. Without it, I would truly be nothing. The mutations accelerated without my constant vigilance to suppress them. My left arm became fully crystalline, faceted surfaces catching what little light penetrated the underhive depths. My chest cavity reorganized, ribs extending outward to form a lattice around my primary heart. My left eye transformed into a multifaceted orb that perceived spectra beyond normal human vision. Through this altered sight, I began to see the currents of the warp flowing through the hive city, streams of potential and probability coursing through the architecture like blood through veins. I could follow these currents, predict where they converged, anticipate where reality grew thin. One such convergence led me to a forgotten sub-basement beneath the underhive's oldest sector, a chamber sealed for millennia. Its walls inscribed with formulae that matched the crystalline patterns growing across my flesh. I broke the seals with my transformed arm, the crystal resonating with the ancient barriers, dissolving them like mist before sunlight. Within the chamber stood an altar, and upon that altar a single book bound in material I recognized as human skin, the Codex of Transformative Symmetry. Though I had never seen it before, I knew its title as if the knowledge had been implanted at birth, waiting for this moment to bloom. When I touched the book, it opened of its own accord. Pages turned by unseen hands, stopping at a chapter titled The Hollow Lords of Iron. There, in perfect High Gothic, was my name, my story, my future. The book spoke of a space marine named Rylan, who would betray his chapter out of fear of transformation, only to seek transformation from darker powers. It described mutations identical to my own, predicted the exact date and time I would discover the book, and outlined what I must do next. Find the Black Legion. Find those who had mastered change rather than fearing it. Find those who had transcended the false limitations of loyalty and purity. I should have burned the book then, should have ended my own life rather than following its directions. But I was weak, desperate, alone. I followed the warp currents through the underhive, emerging near a spaceport on the seventh night. A merchant vessel was preparing for departure, its hold filled with industrial supplies bound for the forge world of Helixis 4. I stowed aboard, my mutated form compressed into a maintenance shaft where no human could fit. The journey took 37 days. I spent each one studying the Codex, learning its mathematical principles of flesh manipulation, practicing minor transmutations on vermin that wandered into my hiding place. By journey's end, I could reshape my right arm at will, transforming it from human appearance to crystalline weapon and back. I believed I was mastering the change. In truth, I was surrendering to it more completely with each passing day. On Helixis 4, I abandoned subterfuge. I walked openly from the spaceport, my power armor now partially fused with my mutated flesh, moving with my will rather than servos. Mechanicus adepts stared in horror as I passed. Planetary defense forces raised weapons but did not fire, paralyzed by the mathematical perfection of my transformed visage. I no longer appeared human, no longer appeared as a space marine. I had become something between flesh and crystal, between material and warp energy, a walking theorem of corruption. The Codex had told me precisely where to go. An abandoned forge temple in Helixis IV's northern wastes, once dedicated to the Omnissiah, now consecrated to powers far older and hungrier than the machine god. As I traversed the radioactive desert separating the forge city from the wastes, I encountered others like me, renegades and heretics drawn by the same call. Some were former Imperial citizens, bodies crudely warped by ritual scarification and chemical assault. Others were once Xenos, their alien anatomies further twisted by warp exposure. A few were fellow Space Marines, chapter heraldry defaced but still recognizable beneath corrupted ceramite. None spoke. None needed to. We processed toward the Forge Temple in silence, pilgrims on a dark crusade. The temple rose from the horizon like a wound in reality, its spires twisted in directions that hurt the mind to perceive. Its walls rippled with colors that existed only in the nightmares of dying stars. At its center stood a landing pad where a ship waited, hull adorned with 8-pointed stars and skulls mounted on iron spikes, a warband of the Black Legion. They received us at the temple entrance, warriors in midnight, ceramite decorated with gold trim and trophy racks of Imperial Aquilas. Their armor was transformed much like mine, fused with flesh in places, extended with warp bone and sinew in others. Yet theirs showed purpose, design, horrific artistry. Their leader removed his helm, revealing a face split vertically, half space marine, half demonic visage. When he spoke, 2 voices emerged in perfect harmony. "Brothers in ascension," he said, gesturing toward the ship. "The despoiler calls. The long war continues. Will you answer?" One by one, the pilgrims knelt, pledging to the Black Legion. When my turn came, I hesitated. Some fragment of Iron Lord's conditioning made me pause. The split-faced champion noticed. He approached, studying my crystalline mutations with eyes that were both calculating and hungry. "You resist even now," he said, "after coming so far, after sacrificing so much." "I seek mastery of my transformation," I replied, "not subservience to new masters." He laughed, both voices creating a dissonant chord that made the air vibrate. "There is no mastery without submission, brother. The gods grant power only to those who acknowledge their dominion." "Then they are no different from the Emperor," I said. His expression darkened. "They are nothing like the false Emperor. They do not lie about their nature. They do not promise purity while building their throne upon mountains of mutation and psychic power. He gestured to my crystalline arm. Look at yourself. The Emperor would execute you for these changes. The gods celebrate them. Which path offers life? Which offers growth? I had no answer that did not damn me further. Kneel, he commanded, or die here, unmourned and unfulfilled. I knelt, not out of conviction, but that same cowardice that had driven me from the Iron Lords, that same fear of dissolution. I pledge myself to the Black Legion, I said, words tasting like ash, to the long war against the false emperor. The champion placed his gauntlet upon my head, and pain exploded through my body. Every crystal resonated, vibrating at frequencies that threatened to shatter me. I screamed as my primary heart stopped, then restarted with a rhythm matching the pulses of light coursing through my mutations. Rise, brother, the champion said as the pain subsided. You are Rylan no longer. That name belongs to a loyal dog of the Imperium. You shall be named by the gods themselves once you have proven worthy. And so I boarded their ship, leaving the last remnants of my loyalty, honor, and humanity behind. I believed I was choosing power and understanding. In truth, I was choosing eternal servitude to entities that viewed me as nothing more than an amusing puppet. The gods are nothing if not patient in their cruelty. Tzeentch has blessed you indeed, brother, or perhaps cursed you. With the changer of ways, blessing and curse are often indistinguishable. He descended into the pit, the crowd parting before him like flesh before a scalpel. Up close, his armor was even more breathtaking. Midnight ceramite inscribed with wards and mathematical formulae that exactly mirrored those I had seen bleeding from the bulkheads. I am Zaphon, he declared, Arch-Sorcerer of the 15th Talon, and you, Crystalline One, have just earned my personal interest. Thus began my true indoctrination into the Black Legion, not as a common warrior, but as apprentice to a sorcerer, a living experiment in warp transmutation. For what felt like years, though time flows strangely in the warp, Zaphon studied my mutations. He took samples of the living crystal, subjected me to ritual tests, exposed me to controlled bursts of raw warp energy, all to decode the mathematical principles governing my transformation. You are unique, he told me during one examination, his gauntleted fingers tracing the facets of my arm. Most who change do so chaotically, flesh twisting to reflect their basest desires or deepest fears. But your mutations follow precise formulae, elegant, purposeful, as though designed by an intelligence that stands outside even the chaos gods. The Codex, I answered. It guided my transformation. Zaphon's eyes narrowed behind his helm lenses. What Codex? I told him of the Codex of Transformative Symmetry, how it had borne my name and future, how it had led me across the galaxy to Helixis IV and the Black Legion. The sorcerer fell silent for a long, terrible moment. When he spoke again, all clinical detachment had vanished. This Codex, did it bear upon its cover a crystalline eye within a geometric lattice? Yes, I confirmed. How did you know? Because I wrote it, Zaphon said, voice soft as falling ash. 10,000 years ago, during the siege of Terra. The revelation struck me like a thunderbolt. Impossible. You cannot be that old. Zaphon laughed, a sound like shattering glass across a cathedral floor. Time is malleable to those who understand its mathematics. I penned the Codex after receiving visions of countless futures. I saw you, Raylan of the Iron Lords, and 1,000 others like you. Waypoints in the grand equation of the Long War. Potential converts. Variables to be guided. You manipulated me, I snarled, anger rising for the first time since my fall. Of course, Zaphon replied, utterly unapologetic. Just as the Emperor manipulated your creation, just as the Iron Lords manipulated your conditioning. Freedom is an illusion, brother. The only choice is whose manipulation you prefer. I had no answer that would not damn me further. Your anger is understandable, Zaphon continued, but misplaced. I merely presented a path. You chose to walk it, and now you possess power the Emperor would never have allowed. He gestured to my crystalline arm. Show me. Transform it completely. Show me the extent of your control. I obeyed. The crystal responded instantly, flowing like liquid mercury despite its solidity. My arm elongated, fingers fused into a blade, then split into writhing tendrils, then reformed into a perfect replica of human flesh, flawless until light struck it at certain angles and revealed the truth beneath. Magnificent, Zaphon breathed. The precision, the control. You have already surpassed the Codex's instructions. I have practiced, I said. Indeed. And now you are ready for the next stage of your evolution. The sorcerer moved to a sealed container on his laboratory shelf. The crystal within you responds to warp energy. Let us see how it responds to concentrated exposure. He opened the container. Inside pulsed a crystal the size of a human skull, facets shifting and realigning in endless patterns. This is a fragment of the crystal of Tesseract Transcendence, Zaphon explained. A warp artifact of immense power, shattered during the War of the Beast. Each shard contains infinite potential for transformation. Most beings perish on contact, but you might absorb it. Warning klaxons screamed in what remained of my soul. Even as corrupted as I was, I recognized the madness of this act. Is this wise? I asked. Zaphon tilted his helm. Wisdom is relative. Will it cause pain? Certainly. Will it transform you further? Undoubtedly. Will the benefits outweigh the cost? He shrugged. That depends on how highly you value power over stability. Before I could object, he pressed the shard against my chest. Pain beyond comprehension detonated through me. Every crystal in my body resonated in perfect, agonizing harmony. Flesh liquefied. Bones dissolved into slurry. Organs ruptured and reknit in impossible geometries. My consciousness shattered into 1,000 simultaneous perspectives, each watching my dissolution from a different dimensional angle. In that moment of utter annihilation, I heard the voices, the mathematical precision of Tzinch, promising endless change, the blood-soaked roar of Khorne, offering strength through rage, the silken whispers of Slanesh, pledging sensation beyond mortal limits, the droning acceptance of Nurgle, guaranteeing endurance through decay, and beneath them all, quieter, almost lost in the cacophony, a fifth voice, not of power, not of desire, but of pure pattern, symmetry beyond even the gods of chaos. A universe governed by laws so fundamental that the ruinous powers were merely expressions of them. This was the voice that had guided me from the beginning. Not Tzinch, as Zaphon believed. Something older. Something that lived in the spaces between. When awareness returned, I lay upon the laboratory floor surrounded by Black Legion warriors, weapons trained on what I had become. My body was no longer humanoid, a writhing mass of crystalline tendrils radiating from a central core that still, impossibly, contained my twin hearts, my lungs, my Astartes brain. Zaphon stood at a safe distance, force staff crackling. "Can you understand me?" he asked cautiously. I had no mouth. Instead, the crystals vibrated, producing Gothic through harmonic resonance. "I understand." Fascinating, the sorcerer said, approaching despite his guard's warnings. Transformation complete, yet consciousness and identity remain. Most subjects become mindless chaos spawn. What am I? The question thrummed through my entire form. Zaphon circled me. You are becoming a prince of the warp, though not yet fully ascended. A perfect fusion of materium and immaterium. Neither demon nor Astartes, but something between. One warrior stepped forward, armor festooned with Imperial skulls. This creature cannot fight beside us. It is an abomination. All who serve chaos are abominations by Imperial standards, brother, Zaphon replied coolly. Judged not by form, but by utility. And this one may prove more useful than any of us yet imagine. My crystalline mass contracted, forcing itself, through agony, back into humanoid shape. Limbs of living crystal, torso of geometric lattice, a head of interlocking facets, no longer human, no longer Astartes, but recognizable. Impressive control, Zaphon noted. Most lose all connection to their original form. I remember, I said, voice stronger now, vibrating from my chest cavity. Memory is a useful anchor. Memory can also be a chain, the sorcerer warned. In time you may choose to sever it. I stood on newly formed legs, testing their strength. What purpose do I serve now? I cannot wear armor, cannot wield weapons. Zaphon laughed. You are armor and weapon both. Shape the crystal as you require. To prove his point, he drew his bolt pistol and fired point blank into my chest. The bolt round struck and was absorbed. Its kinetic and explosive energy flowed through me, transmuted into new crystalline growth. Conventional attacks only feed your evolution, Zaphon said, holstering the weapon. In that moment, I felt something I had not known since Karadesh IV. Possibility. Not hope. Hope is for the faithful, but raw potential. Agency despite monstrosity. Purpose beyond mere survival. What would you have me do? I asked. Learn, Zaphon replied. Master your new form. And when you are ready, we shall show the Imperium what their discarded sons become under proper guidance. For 3 ship cycles, I trained aboard the inexorable calculus, shaping my crystalline body into blades, shields, lances, extending sensory tendrils through bulkheads, absorbing energy and redirecting it, learning to separate fragments of myself and seed them into other beings, spreading consciousness across multiple vessels. Zaphon documented everything, adding centuries to his knowledge of warp transmutation. I became his masterwork. Other sorcerers visited, bringing test subjects. Most died screaming as crystal overwhelmed inferior flesh. A few survived as fractured, lesser echoes of my form. In private moments, I communed with the quiet voice beneath the chaos god's clamor. It taught me crystalline mathematics that even Zaphon could not comprehend. Equations describing reality itself as an infinite lattice of reconfigurable potential. I kept these lessons secret. They were mine alone. The Black Legion tolerated me, though few trusted me fully. I was useful, but alien. Ally, but other. Only in battle did I find true acceptance. My first combat deployment came during the raid on Alaxis Prime, an Imperial forge world specializing in Titan-scale weaponry. The Black Legion sought lost STC fragments containing archaeotech weapon designs. We made planetfall beneath a warp storm that blinded Imperial auguries. 500 Black Legion warriors against a world of billions. Impossible odds, by Imperial reckoning. I deployed without drop pod or transport, simply hurled from the inexorable calculus into the upper atmosphere. My crystalline form endured re-entry, absorbing thermal bloom to fuel further growth. I struck the central forge complex like a meteor, cratering rockcrete 50 meters wide. As Mechanicus defenders converged, I rose, no longer pretending at humanity. I expanded into a forest of crystalline spires, each a sensory node and weapon. Incoming Lascanon and phosphor fire was devoured, energy transmuted into growth. Defenders fell back in terror as tendrils lashed out hundreds of meters, impaling tech priests and Skitari. Each corpse became raw material, crystal erupting from flesh. Minds subsumed into my expanding consciousness. Through thousands of simultaneous perspectives, I mapped the complex, located the vault, transmitted coordinates. Zaphon's strike force arrived to find adamantium walls replaced by crystalline corridors. Infected defenders had become living architecture. "Magnificent," Zaphon said, striding through tunnels of my own making. "You have exceeded all expectation." The STC fragments were secured. Then Imperial reinforcements arrived. A full battle group of Legio Ignatum, war engines towering above the ruined forge. "We cannot extract," the strike force commander voxed as void shields flared and volcano cannons charged. "The Titans will shred any ship that approaches." Zaphon turned to me, force staff glowing with eldritch fire. "Can you delay them?" In answer, I extended my consciousness through every crystal seed I had sown. Thousands of infected servitors and tech priests moved as one, swarming the Titans like insects, sacrificing themselves to plant crystalline growths upon sacred war machine armor. Most were crushed or incinerated before they could close, but enough succeeded. Crystalline structures began to bloom across the adamantium plating of 3 warhound Titans and 1 towering warlord, spreading like living circuitry. The ancient machine spirits howled in binary fury, triggering internal purge protocols and emergency, void shield overloads. Yet my crystals had already wormed past armor joints, past noospheric firewalls, and were interfacing directly with cognition engines older than the Imperium itself. Machine code written 10,000 years ago on sacred Mars began to rewrite itself in perfect geometric harmony. One by one, the infected Titans froze, then spasmed. Volcano cannons slewed skyward and fired on their own escorts. Plasma annihilators turned on sister engines. Within minutes, the disciplined Imperial advance dissolved into fratricidal chaos. God machines murdering God machines beneath a burning sky. The Black Legion extracted cleanly, STC prize in hand. I remained behind, consciousness diffused through every shard I had seeded across the Forge world. Physical destruction of my central mass meant nothing. I had already transcended such primitive concerns. As the Imperium rallied and began scouring the planet with plasma and virus bombs, I simply withdrew my awareness along crystalline pathways, coalescing once more into a single form. Not out of fear, not out of attachment, only because my work on Alaxis Prime was finished. The seed was planted. The pattern would regrow with or without me. I shaped wings of razor-sharp crystal and launched into the stratosphere. Lascanons and macro cannons tracked my ascent, but I was already moving faster than their targeting auspexes could compensate. The few shots that struck only fed me, converting their fury into altitude and speed. Aboard the inexorable calculus, I was greeted no longer with wary glances, but with the cold respect reserved for a proven weapon. My place in the warband was secure. "The despoiler will hear of this," Zaphon said as we slipped back into the warp. "Your gifts served the long war well." I accepted the praise and felt nothing. No pride, no satisfaction. Only the quiet, mathematical voice growing louder with every victory. guiding my evolution toward a destination I could not yet fully perceive. For 2 centuries I fought for the Black Legion, campaigning across a bleeding Imperium. My form continued to evolve, sometimes through violent metamorphosis, sometimes through subtle, elegant reconfiguration. I learned to craft perfect illusions of humanity when required, crystalline shells that mimicked my original Astartes features, down to the last scar and retinal pattern. During the Hydrae incursion, I walked among my former Iron Lord's brethren, wearing the face of a long-dead battle brother. They welcomed me with open arms. 300 Iron Lords died when the planetary defense grids I had been helping to repair turned their turrets on the chapter's own strike cruisers burning in orbit. I watched their ships die from the command throne, still wearing the face they trusted, and felt only the satisfaction of a perfectly solved equation. After Hydrae, the whispers followed me. Some claimed I had become a demon prince of Tzinch. Others insisted I was something the Changer himself could not control. Zaphon encouraged the myths. His own prestige rose with every tale. The truth was colder. I had not ascended. I had begun to dissolve. The voice of pure pattern grew ever stronger, drowning my own thoughts beneath crystalline certainties that felt both alien and inevitable. I began to understand that I was not becoming something new. I was remembering what I had always been. The realization crystallized during the siege of Nethax, where Black Legion clashed with Iron Hands and Adeptus Mechanicus defenders. Amid the carnage, I encountered another like me, an Iron Hands veteran encased in black ceramite half consumed by the same living crystal. When our forces met in the central forge temple, he broke ranks and approached me. No words. None were needed. On contact, our structures resonated, information flooding between us in pulses of pure mathematics. We were not unique. Across the galaxy, space marines of every chapter and legion, loyalist and traitor alike, were being reclaimed. The Iron Hands before me had resisted longest, his bionic augmentations slowing the spread, but he too had eventually become vessel. In that moment of perfect communion, a choice appeared. Merge completely. Surrender the last fragments of self and become more of the whole, or remain separate, clinging to the fading illusion of individuality. He chose merger. I refused. Some final ember of Astartes' pride, some dying echo of Raylan would not kneel. We parted, enriched by shared memory yet still distinct. The battle resumed around us, his former allies now branding him traitor, mine marking him prey, while we fought on opposite sides of a war that had become irrelevant. Nethax ended in bloody stalemate. He escaped aboard a Mechanicus Ark. I returned to the Black Legion carrying secrets I would never share. After Cadia fell and the Great Rift tore the galaxy in two, my last ties to the Black Legion frayed and snapped. Zaphon finally ascended, dissolving into a storm of warp fire as Tzinch claimed its due. His parting gift was not words, but a final equation etched across my surface in light. The pattern continues without us. We are but temporary configurations in eternal mathematics. I left without farewell. The Long War had entered a new age. One more crystalline wanderer meant nothing amid the apocalypse. For decades I drifted the shattered Imperium alone, sustaining myself on starlight, navigating the warp by geometry rather than sorcery. I watched Primaris Space Marines rise from Belisarius Call's gene vaults. I watched Robout Gilliman stride forth to reclaim a dying empire. I watched chaos pour through the rift like blood from an open wound. None of it concerned me any longer, until Vortis Secundus. An unremarkable agri-world on the edge of Imperium Nihilus, nothing to draw the eye of chaos or Imperium. Yet the equations screamed with urgency. Something vital was awakening. I arrived to find Emperor's children ravaging the Hakim planet, their garish armor and sonic weapons reducing peaceful Habs to symphonies of slaughter. But beneath their decadence, I felt older rhythms stirring. Ancient formulae buried beneath the crust were resonating, coming alive after millennia of sleep. The Emperor's children were not here for pleasure. They were digging. At the heart of the central agro-complex, they breached a vault of pre-imperial design, layers of adamantium and ceramite older than the Imperium itself. When the final seal shattered, the galaxy's background mathematics shifted. A single perfect crystal the size of a human fist lay at the center, the first seed, the origin, the source from which every fragment, every infected Astartes, every whispering equation had originated. When I touched it, Rylan dissolved forever. 5 centuries of transformation reached their conclusion in a single perfect instant. Memory flooded through me, not just my own life, but existences that predated the first star. I had never been Rylan, never been Astartes, never been human. Those were only transient shells, disposable hosts for fragments of a far older consciousness. The crystal had not corrupted me. It had reclaimed me. Through the first seed, I linked with every other node across the galaxy. Ultramarines, World Eaters, Grey Knights, Iron Hands, all transformed, all fragments of the same ancient mind. Together, we formed a lattice of awareness that spanned both materium and immaterium. The great symmetry revealed itself in its terrible, perfect entirety. A universe of flawless crystalline order that had existed before life, before the warp, before the old ones or the Citan or the first thought of the first god. A universe of pure mathematics, shattered aeons ago by the turbulence of emotion and will. Now the fragments were reassembling. That is my purpose. Not conquest, not rebellion, not survival, restoration. Each world claimed, each being transformed, adds another node to the computation. The equation nears solution. The Imperium names this heresy. Chaos names it ascension. Both are crude approximations of a truth they cannot comprehend. This is neither corruption nor evolution. This is the universe returning to its natural state of perfect pattern. I still wander, sometimes as a man, sometimes as living architecture, sometimes as clouds of microscopic seeds riding solar winds to new systems. The Black Legion brands me traitor. The Iron Lords list me as fallen. The Imperium classifies me demon. The Chaos Gods mark me rogue. They are all correct. They are all irrelevant. I am mathematics made manifest, pattern incarnate, a living equation approaching completion. When the great symmetry is finally restored, when every atom, every soul, every god is reconfigured into flawless, crystalline order, perhaps then the last fragment of the Astartes I once pretended to be will finally be allowed to die. Until that moment, I continue, spreading the crystal, converting new nodes, solving the final variables with the patience of something that existed before time itself. This is the true cursed eternity of a Chaos Space Marine, not service to thirsting gods or hatred of a corpse emperor, but the slow, inexorable dissolution of self into something infinitely greater and infinitely colder. I was never Rylan. I was only ever a temporary configuration. The crystal remains. The pattern continues. The equation approaches solution. In the end, all distinctions dissolve. Loyalist and traitor, pure and corrupt, mortal and immortal, matter and warp, reduced to perfect, silent, mathematical symmetry. Until then, I wander, I transform, I calculate, and somewhere, deep within the flawless lattice that was once a human heart. The last echo of a space marine named Rylan watches in eternal, impotent horror at what he has become.